All right, what is up, maniacs? Welcome back to WMMAnia. This is episode 33, a very special episode. As you could see, once again we have the return of a good friend of the show, Miss Jillian DeCoursey. Now, my goodness, the brand new Invicta FC Atomweight World Champion. My goodness, it is great to have you back, Jillian. I know things have been crazy. We were just quickly talking after the big win, but just how much has it changed? What has the feeling been like of being able to say, I'm the champion now? You made this dream come true. Just how has it been here on this Tuesday?
It's definitely been interesting. It's like starting to settle in a little bit now. Was like, oh wait, like this is real. Definitely like lived it up a little bit after the fight. But it still didn't feel real. And now it's like, all right, getting back into like regular life, getting back into training, getting back into the gym. It's like, all right, wait, like this is real. It's definitely a little surreal, a little weird.
Yeah, and what I saw you were in Vegas, you just tweeted that out today, right? That was kind of the celebration, right?
Yes. Yeah, and that was, I mean, we had that planned, like, beforehand, and always try and do, like, a little trip, like, after a fight, like, kinda just, like, unwind a little bit, but it was 1,000 times better, of course, going there as the champ.
I know you were pulling the old Tim Sylvia with the belt everywhere, right?
Yep.
Have to. So
We gotta have some
definitely.
fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, geez, come on. What else is it there for, right? Gotta. Where is it now? Do you have it? Oh, it's
Exactly.
in the back
Oh,
right
it's, like,
there,
right
huh?
behind me, yeah.
Perfect.
I mean, it's usually, like, where I work from, so I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I just have the belt in the background while I'm doing sessions." It's great.
That is totally perfect. Yeah, I got to show it off whenever you can. So
Yeah.
it is great to have you here today, Jillian. And like I said, guys, for those tuning in, thank you so much, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. And if you are on Twitter, head on over to YouTube because we cannot see your comments on Twitter for whatever reason. That's just how it goes here on StreamYard. But yeah, today's lineup is very small. It's pretty much going to be the Jillian show since we have nothing to recap. And just two fights on UFC Vegas 62 to talk about. Literally no news. There is nothing that is broken or anything like that.
Like
Yeah, crazy times right now. A little bit of a break, but let's say hello to everybody who is here real quick. What do we got? James Kendricks. Jillian is back, or should I say the new champ, Jillian DeCoursey?
I like
Indeed,
that.
indeed. She's got all these nicknames now: Jilly Bean,
Like
Lionheart, to Champsy. The list goes on and on.
yeah, we can just keep them going, I don't mind it.
Yes, as Rain making his rhymes, the Jillian DeCoursey buying a flying horsey, the Drake Razor video, Frank Drake, of course. Alvin, our Prince of Positivity, says some say MMA is the ultimate single sport. However, I believe it's the ultimate team sport. While it is one-on-one combat, it's that individuals, teammates that help them prepare and put on a show. Yes, you can't get to the dance without the dance partners, right, Jillian? So, good point there. And Rue, friend of the podcast and WMMA Mania's best atomweight in the world, according to Tapology, if that makes any sense. Jilly Bean.
Nice.
Yes. It says the atomweight queen is here. Citro Jillian is the atomweight goat and pound per pound number one.
Yeah.
Alex, good to see ya. Jimmy, Jillian, actual friend of the podcast, good to see you again. Go says atomweight champion, great to have you indeed. All right, so yeah, Jillian, I mean, has just the reaction been like more overwhelming than you expected? I mean, for your believers, I don't even know if they expected you to have such a fantastic performance as you did. Like that, it's been such a great outcome these last two. Has the
Oh my
the
god, yes.
reaction been like? What's it been like?
It's been all like positive, which is nice, right? I mean, beforehand, especially before this fight, there was like a lot of people that were just like kind of like mostly people were supportive, but there's always going to be haters, right? But then after the fact, it's been really nothing but positive. And I mean, that's really nice to see because that's what I try and put out there, right? Just like be positive, be supportive. So to see it like turn around and kind of being like projected back towards me, it shows that I'm like kind of doing what I'm setting out to do, like trying to change the MMA world a little bit and the viewpoints of it, and just being like, hey, like we can be nice to each other. We can try and bring each other up. We don't have to like be tearing each other down all the time. Like go in the cage, do what we got to do, but then let's build everybody up.
Yes, exactly. Save it for inside the cage. And I know what that's one of your things you always say, like, don't trash my opponent. We don't need to make it toxic, like going into it, right? Like unless
Yeah.
it's natural or something. But
Right, like I mean, there's definitely some people that like I really wouldn't want to fight because it would be toxic just because
Hmm.
of, past things and things like that. But I'm like, I don't want that. Like, I want to, fight people I genuinely like, right? Like people that are respectful, people that have earned it, right?
Yeah. Have you ever had a situation with an opponent where you're like, this person I actually don't like? Maybe you didn't make a thing about it, but has there been a case? You don't have to say who, but
Oh
I'm
yeah,
just curious
absolutely.
now.
I had a situation as someone I fought as an amateur, and it was more so their coach.
Mm,
Was very, very just disrespectful to a level that no one should ever cross. Especially as a coach, and that went on for years, years after we fought. Just like the level, like calling, like the names that like I was called like online were like
mhm,
things where you're like, you should never call someone those
right.
things. So that would be someone that I'm like, the level of disrespect, like you don't deserve to be in the cage with me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of characters in the
Yes,
mixed
yeah.
martial arts world. That's the best way to put it, right? But guys, feel free to get in your questions for Jillian as well as, like I said, we have so much time here to get them in, as not much to talk about in the other realm of the world. But Jillian, as for the fight itself, like, I'm curious, did you know like that it was over as soon as you got, around her neck and face? Because I was like, as you really look at it, it was like, okay, you could see it, you kind of had to work your way to get under the neck. But once you were still around, I was like, she's gonna sink this in. There's enough time. Like this could be it right here.
I mean, I heard my like I was lucky. I was in my corner, right? So
Mm.
I heard my coaches were talking to me pretty much the entire time. Um, when we were clinched the cage, I didn't even realize I was doing this, but I was having conversations with them. And they
Okay.
told me afterwards, like they're telling me not to like I was gonna go for like this Kimura like sit down sweep. My coach was like flipping out because like his big pet peeve of me is that like I'll sit to guard and use that for like reversals and get like too jujitsu-y with it. So like this whole camp, he's like, you cannot be on your back. It can't be on your back. So I like he saw me going for it and he's losing his mind in the corner. And I'm like talking to him like, no, no, don't worry, I'm good. Like we're good here. Like we're all right. I had no clue I was doing that until afterwards. And my boyfriend actually told me, he was like, dude, you're a maniac. You were literally like, no, I'm good. Don't worry. We're okay. Like,
That is amazing.
yeah. And then, like, I mean, once we got to the ground, it was literally, I was in like flow state.
Mm,
It was just like every time I've been training, like taking the back for like the last like 6 months or so like I've been getting everyone's back. So it just kind of flowed into like naturally happening. I heard them kind of counting down, right? Like how much time we had left. And like in my head, I'm like yelling at them. I'm like, you guys need to stop counting down the time. She can hear you. She's gonna hold
right.
out. Stop it. But then like after the fact, I'm like, that choke was so tight. There was no way she was actually hearing them. Like she was just focusing on surviving. I thought I was gonna have to put her to sleep once I realized when I got her when she was belly up.
Hmm.
I knew it was so tight, but I thought she was just gonna go out. I was like, it's a choke, it's a title fight, right? She's super
Yeah.
tough. I didn't think I was gonna get the tap. I thought it was just gonna be like she was gonna pass out and the ref was gonna be like, okay, or she was gonna survive and we were gonna go to the second round. Um and I heard them counting down the time and I felt just how tight it was. And I was like, let me just squeeze just some more. Like if I don't have to go to the second round, I'd much rather
Yeah, right.
not.
Of course. Definitely worked out. And I mean, you mentioned kind of the flow state there and the focus and I mean the patience and everything. Like that was what kind of really stood out to me, especially once she shot in for the takedown and had you against the cage, right? And your ability to kind of stay calm there and then work it into your favor. I mean, really impressive stuff. Like, how present were you in like that moment, or was it just like you're so locked in and like you said, you didn't even notice talking to him? Like, do you remember that playing out as it happened?
Yeah, I knew like once she kind of shot in, like it clicked in my head. I was like, "Oh, I own you now." Um because I knew like that's like not really her like game,
Mhm.
she's like stalker, like very patient, very composed. So I knew like I must have hurt her with like the right hand that I threw right before. And then just, the clips that they were playing leading up to the fight, like anyway, you get hit with that a little bit, those clips of my fight right before they're gonna flash in your head like, man, I don't want to get knocked out like that.
Right.
So once she shot in, I was like, okay, we're good. Like you felt my power, like you're not about it. So whatever happens, like in from this moment on, I have the upper hand.
Yeah, and that definitely played out to be true. So it worked out, and it's really kind of, I want to run this by you, Jillian, because if you think about it, like right now in the MMA landscape, among the female fighters, I mean, I'm trying to think. Sekizawa comes to mind, who's also a fellow atomweight of yours, one of the best in the world, obviously. Like for the leaders and top contenders of Fighter of the Year, I think you're right up there now with these last two performances. Just the finishes, who they were against, like the story, all of it like combines. It's very crazy. And who knows? I mean, you could maybe even get one more in before the year. I don't know what you're thinking about there. We'll get to it. But is it kind of a weird thing for you to sit back and think about, all right, this has been a pretty darn good stretch and like kind of just finally reaching kind of this peak of championship status and all the elements that go into it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely there. Like if you just look at like those are two really impressive finishes. They weren't on scrubs at all. They were like it was one was against the former champion, and the other one was like a top contender, right? Where like, if she would have won that fight, she would have had the title fight. So
Mhm.
they were, very like talented girls. And they were first round like impressive finishes. They weren't like things that just happened by
Right.
accident. You saw the technique, you saw the skill there. So it's definitely kind of like it's something I'm not really thinking about too much about, like until like, hey, the time comes and like
Yeah.
maybe that happens. But I mean, it would just be like a stamp on the year, right?
Yes.
Like wow, wait, like two like awesome finishes, became champ, contender for fighter of the year. Like, I mean, how much better can this get?
Totally. And so are you gonna try and get one more in this year? What, Invicta's next show is set for what, middle of?
November. Yeah,
Okay.
it's like November 16th, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not on that card.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as like the end of the year, not planning on it. Thinking maybe like springtime or so. I just had two like really like pretty long, like tough
Yeah.
camps back to back. I had like a 2 month camp like leading up to my fight with Lindsay, and then it was like a 2.5, like 3 month camp for this fight, and they were pretty much back to back. I had like a pretty much like a couple weeks in between both of the camps before I jumped back in. So it's definitely like, all right, let me like reset a little bit. I'm already back to training, but it's more like not fight training. Like
Right.
give myself like kind of get my all my ducks in order, get life back together. Kind of got slacked on a lot of my like business stuff that I need to kind of pick up and get in order.
Finish
So
up.
then when I jump into camp again, I'm like, all right, cool, all that stuff's in check. I can slack on it again for a couple months.
Yeah. Now's the time to kinda relax a little bit in terms of the fight stuff, enjoy the title and all the riches that come with
Yes.
it. But, I'm glad you mentioned kind of the getting back to training though, and like, just doing it to kind of, stay fit and everything, not focusing on a fight or anything. But it's a really fascinating thing that I've thought about recently. And, now that you're champ, I think it's perfect to run it by you. But I'm curious, like, whenever, let's say you watch an interview and the one question that comes up more often than not, generally, typically, like, not doesn't happen all the time, but when people ask, "How's your fight camp going?" Right? No one ever says it sucks, it's bad. It's a
Right.
terrible question, right? It's the worst question. I've never asked that one. I hate to ask it. I'm not going to ask you that. What I'm going to ask you, Jillian, is what makes a camp good, though? What makes a good fight camp? Because they're always hard. It's always tough work and all the things that go into it, right? But like, how do you actually describe a good one? Because no one's ever going to say that it's bad, right? Because that's kind
Right.
of giving things away and whatnot.
Right, absolutely. For me, like a good fight camp is one where I'm like enjoying training most of the time, right? Have good people around me. Have like just like my schedule like set where I'm like, okay, hey, I have these people to spar with. I have, these pad sessions, I have these drill sessions, and everything's kind of like falls into its place. But it's really like for me, what defines like whether it's a good one or a bad one is like yourself, right? Like your
Mm,
mindset. Like, are you in the right headspace when you show up to training? And like, are you enjoying it, right? Because at the end of the day, for most fighters, this isn't something where you're making like insane amount of money, right? You're like the top tier, like the UFC things like that. Um, you're not making an insane amount of money. So if you're not enjoying your day to day grind, it's gonna be a tough path.
right. Yeah, so that's very interesting. And I asked that to another champion, Jutaro Ushiku, the Rising featherweight champion, on the recent episode of Broad Horizon. Shameless plug, that is out now here on the
Yeah.
channel as well, mmania.com. But for him, like he said, it's if he can reach the goals that he sets throughout camp. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And everyone kind of does their things differently and whatnot. So it's kind of fascinating to me to hear what a fighter describes as a good one, because it's going to be different
Right.
for everyone. It's always going to be hard, but like it's never easy or
Right.
good by your typical
Okay.
expectation, I think. So definitely very interesting. But as for the fight again, Jillian, I'm curious about afterward. What happened immediately afterward was kind of something that you don't see all the time. Were you offended at all by Del Boni's kind of instant call out there, and not taking away the moment from you, but definitely getting in there a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, like, I was kind of, like, taken back. I was like, "All right, like, how do I, like, answer this without answering
Yeah.
it?" type of a thing.
Right.
I mean, I got so many texts and messages about, like, "Oh, like, why is she in there doing this?" And it's like, I mean, she did what, like, you have to do sometimes. I don't think it was necessarily her, because she left the cage. I think it might have been, like, her team, like, "Hey, like, yo, go call for it." Um, I mean, I don't think it's something that should automatically be given to her, because even
Mhm.
like the last one, she had to work for it, right? She had to go through the tournament, and she did what
Yeah.
she needed to do to get another shot. She absolutely earned another shot. And this was like a first round finish, so earn it back. You earn it back, yeah. Like I'm open to whatever, but I don't think it should just be an automatic, right? Because it wasn't that. It was like we went to a 5 round split
Right.
decision, something like that. That's like those situations. We've seen that before, and they automatically run it back. Where yeah, absolutely. When it's like 5 round war split decision, it should be run back. But when it's like a first round sub like that, it's like you can get it back, but you got to earn it
Yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah. I know that was just it was just a kind of a different thing to see so quickly, and of course you
Right,
get it, heat of the moment, and of course she wants to, get the rematch, of course, after a loss that way. But
right.
yeah, we'll see how it shakes out, of course. And like you said, went through the tournament when honestly, Jillian, she probably didn't need to, because I think she was robbed in the first Zapatella
Yeah.
fight.
Oh,
That's
yeah. I
just
think.
me.
Yeah, I think most people felt that way. But it's also like with that one, it's like even when it was controversial, you like she had to work for that. Going through a tournament like that to get it
Yeah.
back, like right, like it was a couple weeks after she came out of like a champ camp. Like
Yes,
that's
yes.
like a rough thing to do. So that one, it was like, whew, you worked for that.
Yeah. So like one fight next shouldn't be a problem for her. She
Yeah.
can win that, but yeah, we will see. So, all right, before we get to you guys' questions in there, I appreciate you so much for asking and tuning in here for the champ. Jillian, I got to know, like, what is the goal now, though? Like, do you have one? You're the champion. That was obviously one you wanted to achieve, but in MMA, is there a new thing? Like, do you want to beat some of these other fellow champions around the world? I mentioned Seika Izawa earlier over in Ryzen. There's all these international atom weights that are out there. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's not something you're looking into, but what is the goal now as you've achieved this big one?
I mean, definitely defend, my title, like get a defense behind me. And then it's pretty much like I'm open to like what opportunities present themselves. There's nothing like specifically in mind where it's like, ooh, I want to go and, fight for this organization for this title. It's like if something presents itself, it's like, yeah, we'll consider it and see what the pros and cons are.
All right, yeah, going with the flow. Perfect.
But
So
yeah.
we'll see where it takes us, and we cannot wait to see it. All right, you guys, let's see what you got now for the champ. Jimmy is asking, what was your game planning like against Del Boni?
It was kind of like I knew my striking had gotten so much better. I knew, people didn't really know. They just knew I got a crazy knockout my fight before, but it only, he went like about a minute, so people couldn't really see. So I was like, kind of exactly how it played out. Like, hurt her with my hands, make her feel my power. And when you feel that power, they knew she was going to make a mistake and then just take advantage of it.
Oop, I think. All right,
Oh,
there's a little
I
bit of
think we're
lag there,
coming
but
back to
okay, I
life
think I got
now.
most of that. So,
Yeah.
yep. All right, cool. Makoto says Jillian has haters? Question mark. We support you. I mean, that is an interesting thing, Jillian. Like, of course, fighters are always getting hate from idiots, if we're going to be totally honest. But like, uh, we don't see too much of it. At least for me, like, unless I'm looking for it or anything, I've never really seen people come after you. But how like frequently do you get issues like that?
Not really, honestly, not that often. Because I think it's because of my presence, right? Where most people like, if you're gonna be a jerk towards me, you just look like a really big jerk.
Right.
um, and I mean, even when it does happen, I don't even need to really address it, just because usually before I even like see it or even would need to say anything, there's already like an army of people that just
Yeah.
dismantle this person. But it was more like before, like leading up to the title fight, right? When it was
Mm,
announced, things like that. People it was more comments of like people not believing that I deserved it or earned it, or hey, you're just getting this because you had a viral moment, things like
mm,
that, where it was like, yes and no. Like you get a knockout like that, this is the result of it. It's not just a fluke, right? We've seen it time and time again. You have a very impressive win over a top contender. This is the next step.
yeah. And I'm sure it feels extra good to shut them up after that then.
Definitely. I mean, and even like there was like people did make comments. They were like, "Yeah, I completely doubted you, and now you have my support." So it's like, okay,
Yeah, won them over. How about that?
yeah.
Very cool. You love to see it. There's Jin making a comparison here as he says, well, speaking of building people up, Whaley tries to do the same thing and be positive. Big Whaley fans in the chat, of course. Um, but she seems to get hate for it. Your thoughts on it? So this is another one of those things where um, I don't know. There's a lot that goes into it with these kind of situations, I guess. But just broadly speaking, Jillian, have you paid attention to any of these kind of things Jen's bringing to us?
I mean, I just think it's like, no matter what you try and do, if you try and be good, you try and be bad, like there's always gonna be, and the higher up on the level, right?
Hmm.
Um, the more people are gonna say something, right? And she's like,
Yeah.
she's at the top of the top, right? And so there's gonna be a lot more attention to it. So even if she was a jerk, right? People would have
Yeah.
something to say about that. So I think it's just, as long as you're being true to yourself, it's like, all right, let people hate, right?
Yes. Absolutely. And Alvin says we should always be encouraging each other and building each other up. Why is that so difficult to do? That's the best question I think that
Yes.
has ever been asked, Alvin. Why is it so hard? And I mean, I think if we're gonna be honest about it, Jillian, most people who, you know, talk shit online or whatever it may be, it's because they have their own issues, right? I think
Yep.
that's kind of something we can all agree on.
100%. They don't, and it like honestly, most of the time I'm like, you click on their profile picture and you're like, come on,
Okay,
dude.
makes
Like,
sense.
yeah, and it's just like, and then it's like you kind of feel sad for them because it's like you have nothing else better to do but like trash people online. Like, there's a thousand things you could be doing with your time.
Right. So, unfortunately, that will never change, but it is the
Nope. It's only
reality.
gonna get worse.
Yeah, yeah. No kidding. As the
Fortunately.
metaverse expands, all these crazy things. But Z is here. Says thanks for that fight, Jillian. It was fun. It definitely was for as long as it
Thank you.
lasted. Great performance. Ghost says, I saw that too, Jillian. I thought you were about to do a Kimura trap. He's talking about the defense of the takedown, but went for a far side head and arm to butterfly. So that was flow state, he's asking.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was going for the Kimura trap until my coach was flipping out. So then I kind of went for like a little 100 thing.
Yes, indeed. And Jen says, how much of your timing the step helped timing Del Boni stepping in?
It was all the timing. It was all leverage. Like of like just as soon as like I hit the ground, like bridging and dumping her over. If I would have waited like even just like a millisecond more, I would have gotten flattened down there. So it was like I would say pretty much mostly timing.
All right. Yes, indeed. And Rain says, this one is for Drake Jillian and our guy Ghost in the comments. Says, what do you think of strikers working on their offensive wrestling and BJJ? Well, I mean, we're mixing the martial arts here, right, Rain? So it's always good to yeah, be as effective as you can in all offensive areas while still not neglecting your defense, of course. But yeah, I mean, those aren't too bad skills to add to the repertoire if you are a striking based fighter, right, Jillian? I mean, I don't think there's a problem with it, clearly.
No, it's happening more and more now, right? It's like when even just like a couple years ago, people were able to get away a little bit, right? Like just being a striker, just being like a grappler, and like you could play it. But now everyone's becoming so much more well-rounded that if you don't make yourself well-rounded, it's only going to get you so far.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the arguments our guy Ghost in the comments here will bring up is that sometimes maybe depending on how good you are at the one skill, if you just master that to like just such a degree that no one can even touch you, maybe you won't even need to worry about those things. I mean, we've seen certain cases like, I mean, so far, I guess Israel Adesanya is a great one in terms of a striker at middleweight. Kayla Harrison's judo, obviously, no one's going to catch up to that ever. Things like that. So it kind of depends on the person, really, as well. So
right, and that's such a small percentage, right? Like we're talking
yes,
about like the top of the
yeah,
top of like their arts, where like there's such leaps and bounds ahead of anyone else. Like that's at even the top of their art, right? So
Mhm.
it's like those are like that's like that small percentage of people. But like for like most fighters, it's like no, you need to like eventually round off your skills.
Yeah. At least to some extent. You can't just be completely hopeless in other areas.
Yeah.
We saw how that played out in the beginning of the sport. So, um,
Yes.
as Rain asks, should strikers only work on defensive BJJ in wrestling? So, I mean, a good example of that is like Adesanya, who I don't think, of course, he surely does train some offensive stuff, but
Right.
he wants to strike mainly, so he takes care of the defensive grappling parts, and that's worked out pretty well for him so far, obviously. So, just an example. Sammy is here, and he asks if Whaley beats Carla November 12th, will she be in conversation, in contention for fighter of the year? I'm assuming he means fighter of the year with Jillian, or does she not count since she's in the UFC? No, I mean, I'm speaking over MMA overall. I mentioned Izawa earlier. I mean, I think, yeah, our two atomweight champs here are among the contenders. And in the UFC, like, what Valentina's only fought once this year, right? And she was in a very close one with Santos. So I don't
Right.
think she's in that conversation at the moment. Whaley would have the 2 wins there. Depending on how she beats Carla, yeah, she would definitely be in there. And if, well, I mean, Carla's first fight doesn't help, but if she beats Whaley, you could still put a case there.
Right.
Beating Rose and Whaley, regardless, would definitely put her in there. So, what? It's about 3 solid options. The winner of that fight, maybe, and then you and Izawa is who I would have at the moment. Well, even Ziwu Park, who's in that tournament and Ryzen as well.
Right.
It's just been such a great year for the atomweight division, Jillian. Like I said this after you won. Like I think that your win really just continues to bolster how much better the division overall has gotten in recent years. Like it's on fire right now worldwide.
Yeah, no, and it's like like atomweight fights are always so exciting. It's like sometimes you have like a boring one, but it's rare. They're usually super fast paced and like technical because we're so tiny that like to survive in training, you have to be super
Yes,
technical.
exactly. So would you have, this is what I say, it's like maybe on par with strawweight, if not right underneath. Because like strawweight,
Right.
everyone says is like the best division, but I think atomweight's a pretty clear number 2 at this point, if not right up there, 1A, 1B maybe.
Yeah, I think strawweights are just there's just a lot more of them, right? It's like a
Hmm.
super popular division. It's just a weight class that a lot of females fall into. So it's like, it's a lot more broad, right? There's a bigger pool than there
Yeah.
is with like the other divisions.
Yeah. And it's always crazy to me to think about too, like if, let's just say if the UFC in some fantasy world and Matt picked up every other, all the atomweights in the world right now and had them, and then you had strawweight and atomweight together, you would see some of these strawweights like Carla, who has
Right.
been advocating for it. She would drop down. Tisha Torres would probably drop down. Jessica Penne would be open to it again. Watterson. Like there's a lot of names that
Right.
would make atomweight even better. So
Right. Absolutely.
it is
Yeah, because
crazy to think.
there's a lot right now within the UFC strawweight division that went up from
Yeah.
105 just because they were like, hey, I need this opportunity. I need to, progress my career. I have to jump up a weight class.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about her a couple weeks ago when she fought, but Loma Luke Boonmay, who was in Invicta,
Mm-hmm.
she's an atomweight. Like I don't care
Yeah.
what anyone says, she is an atomweight. She just has to fight at strawweight in the UFC, obviously. So she would be a great person to have back down there if that was an option for her.
Right.
So
Yeah, because she's not, it's not that she's like you see some of the atom weights I've gone to, you see they like significantly bulked up and things like that. She really hasn't. Like she's just not cutting as
yeah,
much weight as she was when she was fighting at atom weight. So it's like she could easily go back.
yes. Yeah, and one of the examples that stood out to me when you said that was Jin Yu Fry, obviously the former
Yep.
champ. She's pretty much the best case there. I mean, she's always been pretty jacked, but yeah, she's
Oh
definitely
yeah.
packed on the
Yeah,
muscle
and like
now.
she started to have she started to have like a rough time, like her last couple at atom
hmm
weight, just like making it and it got to be tough. So for her, I think she would probably stay at 15. I don't think she would go back to
Yeah,
105. It's just, it's just a lot to
yeah,
make that sometimes.
definitely. And Jen here says, Jillian, you train at one camp. Would you ever consider training at other gyms or other camps to improve? I saw Wei Li has been traveling the world, changing camps the past year. Yes, that she has.
So I mean, what I do is I have like two main bases. Like I train out of Long Island MMA, and then I train out of Ring Sport Muay Thai. And those are my two like main bases. But I do travel around to like spar and things like that. But I'm not for me personally, it doesn't traveling to have too many like cooks in the kitchen,
Mm,
for lack of a better way to put it, doesn't work. For some people, it works great for them to have like a get a lot of different influences, like just a lot of different experiences, training at a bunch of different places. For me, that doesn't work. I need like having my like two main coaches and just honing in, focusing with them, and then traveling around to like get sparring and drilling. That's effective. So that probably would not be something I would do.
yeah, need that stability a little bit. So,
Yeah, I need structure.
yes, yeah. And Cintro says, we would be sad and happy if you fought Zach. I would definitely a very bittersweet matchup, but we would still root for you since you are a friend of the podcast and two-time Fan of Punch breakdown. Yes, that is right. Last week, Ghost did another breakdown for you after the win on that one. So if you want to check that out
Yes.
at any point, it was good stuff. James is asking, Jillian and Victor and Ryzen double champ.
I mean, I'm like open to whatever opportunities present themselves. So
So, I mean, that answers Jimmy asking about the Phoenix tournament, which we touched on a little bit with Del Boni. Is that even going to come back, Jillian? Do you have any insight? It's been a while since the last one.
yeah, the last one was I mean the atom weight one. So I think it would be like they'd probably have to cycle through because the atom weights were the last one, the
Mm,
last one, like kind of the chain there. I haven't heard any rumblings like of what the status of them are, if they're still mixing them in. I haven't heard that they're not happening anymore. I think they're just going to be maybe like spread out more because they are back to consistency with their cards, right? Doing one every other month, which is nice. But I don't. But for the as far as atom weights go, I think that we're going to be at the end of
yeah.
the chain since we were the last one that just happened. So it all depends on where I'm at in my career at the point where it rolled back around.
Yeah. And I mean, at the moment, it definitely doesn't make sense for you to be in one now as the
Yeah, no, I
champion.
think
So,
and I think as a champion, it's like you can't like it's not really like an option.
yeah. Yeah. Just doesn't
So
make
I'd
sense.
rather be the champ than in the tournament.
Yes, definitely. uh, and Citro says, Ghost mentioned you need a ton of conditioning to time the steps. So, Jillian, you must have insane cardio, right? I've never seen you get tired.
Yeah, I mean that's like one of my biggest fears is like getting tired in a fight. So it's not getting knocked out, it's not getting finished. It's like, oh man, if I get tired, like that's bad. And I think that's because it's something you have complete control over, right? We have like control of our conditioning, we have control of our cardio. We don't have full control. Like if we get knocked out, right? We get finished. Like that's up to sometimes the universe. Um, so I'd like to say that I have pretty good cardio. I think being always like the smallest person in training and at the gym helps with that because I need to be able to like everything that I do, I have to put so much more work into just to like survive. I train with a lot of times like my MMA rounds, a lot of times are with the guys at the gym. So like in order for me to get them, for me to be catch on top, I have to be go, 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 go,
Mm,
go. um, so, I like to say my cardio is pretty good, but I mean, the last 2 fights, I haven't had to test it much, so I'm like,
yeah.
"Oh, I don't know."
Yeah, who needs it in that case?
Yeah.
So did you change up like much of the preparation in terms of, some people will say 5-round fight versus 3-round fights? Big difference there in training sometimes, or do you kind of keep it consistent no matter what's going on?
So that like I got into my own head a little bit with that, like at the beginning of this camp, I kept telling one of my coaches, I was like, oh man, wait, no, I gotta do, like I gotta do a lot more because it's a 5-round fight. And then he thought about it, whatever, and he's like, a couple days later, he's like, I don't think you need to do anything more. He's like, you already do like everything you need to do. He's like, you already put in the work. And it's not that you're getting exhausted or gassed in like a 3-round fight. He's like, you're where you need to be. So just keep doing what you're doing and don't think about it being like a 5-round fight. He's like, I've trained so many people for 5-round fights, and it's as long as you're like in shape, like you're good. Like it's not that much of a difference. So like I kind of just shift after I had that talk with him, like I shifted my mindset and it helped. Right. Because I was like, every day I'm like, oh my God, I need to do more. Like it's a 5-round fight. And it was just like, no, like your body can only handle doing so much. Right.
Right.
And then it's like counterproductive because now you're burning yourself out. So now it's like, you can't perform at the same level in training, where it's like, no, if you're just putting in everything you got in all your training sessions, you're going to be okay.
That totally makes sense. And Jin says, where do you train, Jillian? So you mentioned the 2 spots there you like to bounce between, but specific names I'm sure as Jin would like.
Yep. So it's Long Island MMA out in Farmingdale on Long Island, and then Ring Sport Muay Thai in Queens, New York.
There you go. And how far away are they from each other? Is it pretty easy to go?
So I used to live in Queens, so that's how I was like kind of connected with things in Queens. Now I live out on Long Island. So like Long Island MMA is only about like 10-15 minutes from me. So that's like my main base.
Right.
And then Ring Sport in Queens is about maybe like 30 minutes from me.
Okay.
So not terrible. Like when I spar, I'll go out to like MK Muay Thai in New Jersey, and that sometimes can be like an hour and a half trip and things like that. But the workout there is like great, so it's like you got to make those sacrifices. Yeah,
for sure. And Sammy says Drake thinks Carla has a chance of winning. So hey man, I give everybody at least a 1% chance, and I'm not necessarily saying that's what I give Carla, but everybody has a chance, Sammy. But since that is the question here, I'll springboard it to you, Jillian. I mean, most people are clearly favoring Whaley, I think, in that matchup, and for pretty good reason. But I'm curious,
right.
How much of a chance, percentage-wise, do you give Carla? Because she's been a perpetual underdog for a lot of her career, and I mean, inaugural titles to her name in Invicta and UFC. Got on this winning streak again, whether you agree with some of the decisions or not. She manages to stay around, so I don't know. Just how do you feel about it?
I mean, I think it's like, I've been on that side, right? Where like everybody's like, yeah, no, there's no chance. And then it's like you pull it out and people are like, oh, all right. So I think like anyone that's stepping into a fight, right, especially at top levels, has a chance, right? And she does have a lot of accolades behind her, right? It's not like we're talking about like some chump that's just coming in like that doesn't have, anything behind them. No, like, and she's improved a lot. I think it's just going off like that last fight where it was just like a snooze fest. It has like brought the doubts really back in, where it was like, hey, like that fight was not like impressive on either side. Like it was, both of them did not bring their best at all that night. And it was like, okay, well, what are we going to see? Are we going to see, the Carla before that was just like,
that's
spunky and like bringing it, or are we going to see, snooze fest?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because it is pretty funny. You look at the perception change because yes, that fight was one of the worst ever, all that. If you think about, let's say the Yan Xiaonan fight was a title fight, people would be like, "Holy shit, Carla's back in for real again!" Like it would be a pretty different story, because that was clearly one-way traffic, and her best performance maybe ever. I mean, it's been a long time, So, yeah, it's just kind of funny how the narratives can swing in certain ways. But again, I still do favor Whaley a good amount here in this one, but we'll see. We'll see. That's the fun of it. And Jimmy asks, does Jillian pay attention to ADCC and take techniques from them, the competitors there?
I mean, it's like I don't like religiously watch like grappling. ADCC is one that I actually like. I'll catch like clips from here and there and be like, oh, this is actually like entertaining because it's so fast paced. But I don't really like I'm not someone that watches like grappling technique videos and be like, oh, I'm gonna pull this off. My coaches will like send me stuff and be like, oh, this is like I think this would work well for you, and then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But I don't really do that on my own.
All right, yeah. And Jin says, what does Jillian think of Jin Yu Fry, who we mentioned earlier, the former Invicta champ? We have someone in the chat who doesn't like her style.
I love Jen. I think she's like great. I think she's great for the sport. And she's achieved a lot. When she was the champ, I was actually on a few cards, of her cards where she was fighting. We've interacted and like, I like her. I like her style.
Yeah, I got to put some respect on the name for what she has done for the Atomweights too. That is
Yeah.
for sure. And Jimmy with a hypothetical here saying, if you did do the Phoenix tournament, would they have your belt on the line in the first round, or what Ryzen does and not do the champions with the belt on the line? Well, as we mentioned, I don't think it's any debate. They probably just wouldn't do that in general. But if Jillian
Right.
was to be in it, I would imagine why not have her fight for it? Defend the title in there, but. Just it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, Jimmy. So very
Yeah, like I mean,
hypothetical indeed.
I wouldn't want to do like because it's a different fight. So like
Yeah.
I would not be I would not agree to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this tournament and put my like belt on the line. No, I'm not doing that.
Right, right. And Rue asks for your thoughts on Sekizawa as a fighter. Or have you watched any film on her yet?
I mean, I watch like so many fights. Sometimes the international cards are kind of a little bit harder because like the times that they fall. So it's just like catching things afterwards. But anyone who's at like the top of their, weight class, and especially if they're in my division, like I have respect for because like I know, what it takes to be, an atom weight and be successful.
Absolutely. And this is my favorite one so far, probably, as James says, New York, is Jillian aware of the Impractical Jokers? And have you ever ran into them in the supermarket?
I am absolutely aware of them. But I have not run into them. That's probably because I don't spend like I'm not really in like the neighborhoods that they are generally like filming at and things like that. But oh my God, I would love to be part of like one of their skits at one point, like without even knowing it. It would be amazing. Like the one where, they put the balloons on people like
Oh,
in the
yes.
supermarket and stuff like that. Oh my God, that'd be great.
That is always a good time. Who's your favorite one out of the bunch?
Oh man, it all depends. I think it depends on the joke.
Right, right. That's fair. Definitely a fun show that is. And Moise is here. It says Team Jillian. Indeed.
Yeah.
Jimmy says, what would your strategy be in the Phoenix tournament? It has to be different from 5-round fights or 3-round or yes. Presumably. Oh yeah, he's asking kind of a double.
I mean, I think it would be a lot different than when I went into it last time. When I went into it last time, my strategy was more like, oh man, like you gotta like it was thinking about the next rounds and like not crushing your load, not taking too much damage so you could survive for later fights, and that did not work out well. So I think I would just go into it the way I've been going into my last couple fights, where it's like we're not thinking about the next round, we're just doing what we got to do. And I mean, given that I finished the last two in the first
Yeah,
round,
not
I
too
think I
bad
would
of an
have a
idea.
I think I would have a much different showing if I did do it again.
Right. Certainly. And Moise, so Jillian, I've noticed that you're kind of a big horror fan, right? So he's asking, what is your favorite Pinhead quote?
So all my horror stuff comes from my manager. I'm always
Okay.
like, hey, this gets me lots of interactions. I need some help kind of setting this up. So it's a little bit fraudulent.
Okay. All right. Wow. Exposed here.
Yeah, because I kind of like talk to him about it. I'm like, hey, whenever I do these, like it's getting me all the interaction. I need some input.
Fantastic. What would you say is your favorite horror film then from what you have seen?
I mean, I'm like a chicken shit, to be honest.
Okay.
So it's like I'm someone that can't watch like horror films like late at night because I get too riled up.
Right.
So I have to watch them like in the afternoon, which is like the opposite time when like most people want to watch a horror film. It's like ridiculous. And like now, like my boyfriend now, he's even more of a chicken shit than I am. Like he can't watch it at all. So it's like, planning it, and like watching it, like if he's not around, like my mom or something like that, or if Jason's like, oh no, you really got to watch this one, like kind of egging me on to like watch them. But I don't necessarily have like a favorite. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I like not I'm not super fan of like the gory ones. So
Right. Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Yeah, I'm not super into horror either, but if it's a good movie, it's a good movie. Is kind of how I
r-
look at it.
right, yeah,
So.
100%.
And Jen is asking, what is your favorite cake shop in New York?
Ooh, cake shop. Well, it used to be Martha's bakery, but then they had a little health code stuff that I just found
Oh,
out about, so that's no
uh-oh.
longer a favorite. So I haven't necessarily found a favorite one in New York, but my favorite treat at the moment is these things called F bombs.
Hmm.
I can't get them in New York; they're a Ohio specialty. So after fights, like my manager brings me a massive stash of them to last me for a while.
What are they? Are they like cake type things or like
Oh my
candies
god, they're
or?
like basically like they're like cake pops without the pop.
Oh,
And like all like each center, like they have a bunch of different varieties. So like you get like this like icing ball with like cake and
oh
then like a
my.
different center. Oh my god, they are the absolute best thing ever.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So I have to find me some F bombs then.
They
Very,
they you can
very cool.
I my mom, because I gave her some, and she like looked them up, and like you could like order them online. So they are, but they're so good.
Awesome stuff there. So the word is out. The word is out. And Krombopolis is here. Says, "Hey, I saw your last fight. Congrats on winning the belt. Indeed, big congratulations."
Thank you.
Edgelord is here. He says, "Jillian DeCoursey, the same one that won the belt a few days ago. They had you on the high package with that insane right-handed KO. Yes, it's been a good year. That's the Jillian, all right." So,
That is me. I mean, yeah,
uh,
that clip has been played over and over. I'm like, it's great for me, not so much for my opponent that got flatlined.
right. Yes, never gets old for everyone except for her.
I mean, she's
All
been
right.
overall like I've heard that she's been a pretty good sport about it. So
Yeah. All right. Well, that's definitely good. But all right, we'll get one more in here before we close things up with the two fights that we will preview for UFC Vegas 62 this weekend. As James is asking about Impractical Jokers again, as we are big fans of the show, at least he is, at least he says. And he asks if you saw the one where Kayla Harrison did the punishment on Murr.
no, I need to look that one
Yeah.
up.
Yes, that was a
I'm
good
checking
moment
that one
there.
up now.
Good
That's on my
moment.
list to Google later.
All right. Yes. So, all right, you guys. Thanks so much for all the interaction. It means a lot. But we will now, and feel free to interact about the fights we'll talk about too. But we will get into UFC Vegas 62, just two fights, as I mentioned, and we will be kicking things off here in the strawweight division. Let me pull it on up. All right, here we are as Sam Hughes is taking on Piera Rodriguez. So, Jillian, I might be wrong here, but do you have any affiliation with Sam Hughes? I feel like I've seen you kind of tweet about maybe a
Um,
friendship or something
Yeah,
related
so
to
we're
her.
not we're not like we haven't trained together or anything yet. I mean it's something definitely would love to do at some point, but we are very, very friendly, so I'm
Mhm.
definitely biased on this one.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, I mean, the odds makers, though, have a pretty solid line here in favor of
Right.
Rodriguez, which is kind of interesting. And you will remember Rodriguez from the Contender Series. She defeated Machado, who just debuted in Invicta, right? And beat Liz
Right,
Tracy on the
yep.
same card as you. So good stuff there. Look at these girls doing their thing. And then she beat Kay Hansen in the debut, which was, I'm sure that was a betting upset. At least I would have imagined it to be. Pretty impressive performance. Kind of started off slow, but then came on stronger as the fight went on. And obviously, Sam had a rough stretch to the start of her UFC
Right.
career, but she was fighting killers on pretty short notice most of the
Yep.
time. And then has gotten things together against Nunes and then Elise Reed the last time where she smashed her. That was a very good performance indeed. Sam Page, one
Yeah.
of my favorite nicknames, Jillian. As someone with such great nicknames yourself, I love the Sam Page nickname.
Yeah, it's
But
awesome.
but with your bias and what you know about Rodriguez, how do you kind of see this one playing out this weekend?
Yep. So I mean, I think like since Sam like switched camps, she's like improved like a lot. So I think she does have a chance to kind of pull off the upset. And I'm gonna be rooting for her. And being the underdog most of the time, I always want the underdogs to win, even outside of us being friendly. So I think if kind of things play out right and she brings her best game, she definitely has a chance to kind of pull off that upset.
Yeah, got to kind of impose that Sam Page will, if you will.
Yes.
And one of kind of the things that, as Sammy has mentioned here, is maybe one of her kryptonites has been not necessarily being able to handle pressure very well, at least in that losing streak that she was on. So it's kind of a what's that common phrase? Immovable object versus
Right.
unstoppable force kind of situation with her for the most part. And it seems like that's something that she has obviously been working on in the last two fights, even
Right.
though the pressure hasn't been the same. But for Rodriguez, I don't necessarily expect her to be that level of aggressive that can bother Sam too much. And if she can counter that with her wrestling game, it'll be fun on the ground, I think, no matter what. And I expect it to go there because both of these ladies can handle themselves in that
Right.
department. So
Hey, but then sometimes, like, it's like when you expect it, right? When you're like, "Oh, they both
cancels
of
out.
them have it," and then you're like, "What the heck? Why is this a striking match? Come on!"
I know that was completely Dern versus Jandaroba for me. I was like, "Are
Oh
you
my
kidding
god,
me?" Like that
yeah.
was fun. It was a great, fun fight. But give me the jujitsu there, man. Come
Right.
on.
But
So
it's like, when you're at that such a high level too, and your opponent's at the same level, it's like, like, let's keep it in unknown territory.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And this is a good question from Centro though. He's asking, do you think Sam fighting Torres to start her UFC career has helped her against lower opposition?
I think so, right? Because it's like anytime you get thrown to the fire, no matter the result, it's gonna elevate your level, right? Because you went
Mhm.
like, she went like pretty high up the food chain right off the bat.
Yeah. So it was like sink or swim for her, and obviously she
Right.
has managed to make that work. And then, yeah, right after Luke Bume, a tough one, and Pinheiro, who's also waiting to see her back. My goodness, she's a great prospect as well. So, all right. Well, yeah. I mean, don't need to spend too much time on that one. Looking forward to it. As we got this big main event here, though, Jillian, which as it's gotten closer, I have gotten much, much more excited for. I'm really looking forward to this one. I like watching both these fighters fight as they are, but the fact that we get 5 rounds for it, that excites me a whole lot. So
Yeah.
the flyweight main event, Alexa Grasso, fellow Invicta alum, taking on Viviane Araujo, potentially title shot on the line here, Jillian. I mean, this fight, I'm glad it's finally happening. It was supposed to happen a while ago, but now, like I said, we get the 2 extra round potential. Just give me your initial, thoughts and feelings for this one because I'm very excited for it. I think it's a great stylistic matchup.
Yep, so I mean, I think, the longer it goes, the better it is for Grasso, right? Because she just has, like, her cardio is insane. She's super sneaky offensively. So I think, like, the longer the fight goes, it's in her benefit. But, Viviane can make it like she's like a brawler, right? She can make it really ugly and just, like, get in there and make it dirty, then I think the tides turn to her. So, but the longer the fight goes, I think Grasso takes it if it goes, into those later rounds.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the kind of safe general consensus to make about this matchup because if you look at Araujo's career in the UFC up to this point, like her biggest maybe issue has been the gas tank, and it cost her in some of
Right,
those fights with what Jessica I was one of them, and then Chukagian. There's some examples where she did show that like it was maybe getting all right against
right,
Roxy, and then the last fight though when she beat KGB Lee, Andrea Lee there. That was like where it held up and she was looking great everywhere, nearly finished her with that head kick in the first round. Like
right,
that was that Viviane Araújo, if she shows up, like that's a potential, title threat there. And for Grasso, I think if you look between them, Araujo has proven to be the more dangerous of the two fighters. But again, it just comes down to if she can. I mean, the 5 rounds, she struggled with the three, right? So it does
right,
come down to if she can do some serious damage early on Grasso, who is always very elusive, great boxing from the Lobo Gym
right.
fighters and everybody down there in Mexico. But man, The thing with Alexa too, though, is like people will knock maybe her lack of ground game, but that's a big myth. We've seen.
Right? No, she's like sneaky, and you're like, what is happening here? This is awesome.
Yeah, like in the Macy Barber fight, for example, when Macy tried to get things down,
Yep.
in moments there, she countered it and looked great. So she's been working on everything in all areas. But it's very interesting too. Like, you don't realize Viviani's 35, right? Kind of crazy that she's. I don't think that's going to be a factor, but maybe in terms of mentality and wanting to get to the title sooner rather than later, of course, as
Right.
Grasso feels like she's been around forever despite being just 29. Um, has the slight height advantage here, 1 inch, and then is losing 2 inches of reach. And she is the slight favorite. So I think that those odds
That's
are
always that always blows my mind, like how when like someone's taller and then their
yeah.
reach is shorter. I'm like how does this like happen? Like I don't like understand this.
Yeah, it does not compute, but
Yeah.
let's see here. James says, would Grasso be the most marketable fighter in the UFC if she consistently finished people? How do you feel about that thought, Jillian?
I mean, I don't know about the most marketable, but definitely like ups your value, right? Like if you're getting those finishes. Um, as far as marketable, that's all. The UFC is very picky by who they decide is marketable, and it doesn't always correlate to what we think it would
Right.
be make somebody marketable.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of obviously the Latin American fan base and all those things, she's definitely a good proponent there. But if you were to pick between her and Aldana, I think they've given Aldana maybe a bit more love. I mean, Grasso has had some injury issues and, missed fight opportunities and whatnot.
Right.
But obviously on the best stretch of her career right now, looks great at flyweight. And yeah, this is a big one. I mean, do you think, Jillian, like if we look at the landscape of flyweight, is this a rightful number one contender fight? Winner fights Valentina, or do we kind of have to wait for there's Fioro versus Chukagin coming up? What do you kind of think here?
I mean, I think it's definitely between those two, right?
Mhm.
Those two fights. Like, I think it's going to be, between the winners of this fight and the Kochagian fight. But it's like going to be, I think, who's more impressive, right? It's not going to be about who necessarily wins. It's like how
Right.
you win, how you look in the fight. That one of those two are going to get the title.
Yeah. And
I
thankfully,
mean, like
they're all
I train with Caitlin sometimes, so
right.
of course, I'm going to be biased and be voting for her to get it again. I'd love to have her, get another shot at it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, she might need a big finish, considering the
Yeah,
recency kind of her last one. But I mean, if you can beat Fioro that way and on that card, UFC 280
right.
next week, so that's a big spot to do it. As Ghost here asking, how good is Araujo at cutting the cage? Does she just plod forward, or can she actually sidestep and use hurting strikes to trap her opponent? No, she's a very good mobile striker. Like, I'll never forget, Jillian, like Viviane Araujo, and I think people have forgot, she had one of the very best debuts in like UFC history, albeit maybe not the best opponent, but she's a flyweight, has fought at strawweight before, came in on short notice at bantamweight, and
Right.
finished. I think it was Toledo Bernardo. I'm trying to remember, but either way, knocked out her bantamweight opponent, in her
Right.
debut. And
On short notice.
yeah,
That's impressive on two different levels.
yes, it was a crazy, crazy showing. She looked fantastic there, and she always looks great with her striking in general, and when she's not tiring out. But I think that's something that she obviously knows she's needed to work on. And Ghost asking if she has a good low kick, since Gross was susceptible to low kicks, but somehow fighters forget to use them against her. Maybe it's
Yeah.
not so much that they forget, but like I'm sure, Jillian, when you're going against a boxer as like fluid and technical as some like Grasso can be, you get a little bit mesmerized or fixated maybe on certain aspects that, I mean, it's such a chess match mentally, right?
Right. Well, and it's also like some people are just really good at like changing those angles. So like those kicks aren't necessarily there, right? Like they might look like they're there from the outside, but when you're in there, just a slight change in the angle and that the kick isn't there anymore, or at least there enough to do the damage you need it to do so you don't get lit up with the hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll also always remember Grasso's performance against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Like, whew, that was a champion in that fight for sure. So
Yes. Yeah, that was sick.
that was some crazy stuff. But Yes, I'm very, very much looking forward to that main event. UFC Vegas 62, the only action we'll be previewing. And I know I said the lineup was light, but I guess I should also mention that Emi Fujino, one of the pioneers, she did win her fight in Pancrase this past weekend. So just a quick little note there. Shout out to her, one of the pioneers of the sport. Still against a very inexperienced opponent. But hey, congrats on the win, Emi. We love to see it. Good stuff there. But that is UFC Vegas 62, you guys. And right at the hour mark, I think we made good time in there. Jillian, the champ, is very busy. So we won't keep her too much longer here. So, Jillian, appreciate you so much. Let me get my plugs out of the way real quick, and then we'll close it off with yours. But I mentioned Broaden Horizon is out now, episode 20, a big one there with the boss, Nobuyuki Sakakibara. We had the Ryzen champ, featherweight champ, Juntaro Ushiku, Suchil Kim, who just won this past doubleheader. Koji was also there, and Megumi Fuji, the GOAT herself. We always like to get her on the big every 10 episodes. So we got her on 20.
Nice.
Good chatting with her as always. And then spoke to Justin Gaethje recently, and got some stuff coming out this week as always, you guys. So Jillian, you can follow her at Lionheart Jill on Twitter. And anything else that you'd like to say, Jillian? The champ, the floor is yours. Congratulations again, and thanks so much for tuning in.
No, thank you. Thank you guys for all your support. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, make sure if you're not following me, give me a follow. I'm Lionheart Jill on Twitter, Instagram. Get a little bit different content on each Twitter. I'm definitely more active. So make sure you guys give me a follow, and thanks for all the support, and thanks for having me.
Of course, always a pleasure. Until next time. So, all right, you guys, thanks so much. I will see you here same time next week. Enjoy the return of UFC and just the weekend in general. Go outside if you can. It's not good to be cooped up watching fights all the time, but
Yes.
Stay safe and stay sane. You guys, appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.
Awesome.